August and Noah. First, I just want to tell you, you've done such a beautiful job here this morning, and you chanted your Torah with grace and your Haftarah so thoughtfully, and you have just offered us some really quite important ideas for us to grapple with this morning. Yasher koach to you and your families, and Mazel Tov. Noah, you called out the nature of human beings to get excited about shiny things and to have short attention spans as we look for immediate gratification or the next trendy thing, even if truly that thing is not serving us, and not only not serving us, but is actually dangerous for us. And August, you raised the difference between punishment and complete destruction, countering the biblical God's whims towards destruction and warning against it. And you asked a question that feels particularly important for this time that we're living in. Can something get so bad, be so ruined, that it is destroyed beyond repair, past the point of being fixable? In fact, there's a moment in this week's Torah portion where everything does appear to be destroyed beyond repair, and like we might, in fact, give up on the hard thing. As you know, Moses had gone up the mountain to talk with God and receives the tablets of the covenant. But the people below grow afraid that Moses is never coming back. So they ask Aaron, Moses' brother, to build them a golden calf to worship, an idol to replace Moses and God. And Aaron does just this. Moses and God catch wind of what they've done, and Moses descends the mountain, and in great rage, he takes the tablets and he smashes them on the ground, and they shatter to pieces. Now, as you might imagine, our tradition has a lot to say about this moment. In the Torah, Moses goes back up the mountain, begs forgiveness, and brings down a second set of tablets with God's words. And some 1,500 years later, the rabbis write that when the people set out on their journey from that mountain to the promised land, luchot v'shivrei luchot munachot ba'aron, the broken tablets and the whole tablets were placed in the ark together, and they were both the fragments and the new ones were carried with them on their journey. It's really stunning Torah, stunning teaching. But having read both of your Divrei Torah and the questions that you raise about humanity, how we seek to escape when something is very hard, and how much despair we feel when everything feels destroyed, I felt compelled to talk a little this morning about this moment in history that we're living in, where lots of things do feel utterly destroyed, and it would be easy to give them up and choose something else. I mean, doesn't it feel a lot today like things might be utterly broken and potentially even beyond repair? This week alone, Alabama's out there ruling that embryos are children. In Oklahoma, a sweet, creative trans teenager named Nex was bullied and ultimately murdered just for being who they were. By this coming Tuesday, we'll probably have a candidate for president who has promised to be a dictator on his first day, should he be elected. 134 Israeli hostages, including women and children, are still being held by Hamas, and millions of Palestinians are suffering famine and disease in a devastating humanitarian crisis. There is alarming homelessness and rising hate in our own city, and apparently the Atlantic Ocean currents are even closer to collapsing than scientists previously thought, a harbinger of climate catastrophe. Friends, it would be easy to conclude that things are broken beyond repair, and easier still to choose some distraction to quell our grief. And so all of this and your teachings made me want to ask a follow-up question to this midrash that we took with us, both the broken fragments and the whole new set of the tablets with us on our journey. See, because there's a pretty big gap between when the tablets were smashed and when their broken shards were placed in the Mishkan, in the ark. Like, how'd they get in there? Who gathered up the broken fragments? Literally, and I suppose quite metaphorically, when all was broken, who picked up the pieces? Who had the capacity, the courage, to bend down and pick up the pieces of this broken people, this broken covenant, this broken hope, and place them into the Mishkan so the people could heal and move forward? And can that teaching help us face the brokenness that we are experiencing now? Who will pick up the pieces today? So I looked for an answer from our tradition, much like our students did today as they tried to answer their questions. And I found that the rabbis didn't take up this question. It wasn't something that their time needed to know. But it is what our time needs to know, which leaves it to us to figure it out. So what if it went something like this? Picture the moment. Moses' hands are still in the air, and God's sacred words are strewn now at the people's feet in pieces. The wilderness goes silent. Time goes on, days, weeks, months. The people gather every so often to figure out what to do with the pieces. Some say bury them so that no one ever has to hear what we've done. Some say, let's find a new God who doesn't get so angry. Some say, look, this is our lot now. We did this, and there's no coming back. But one night, someone wonders aloud, what if we picked up the pieces and took them with us? Some laughed. Pick up the pieces? Impossible. And anyway, who would do it? Couldn't be Moses. He was far too angry, stomping around the grounds in a huff ever since all this went down. Couldn't be Aaron. He was too consumed by his guilt and shame. He never even made eye contact anymore. What about Nachshon? That guy was brave enough to cross the sea first. He was far too impatient, though, always wanting to just get going already, without much of a plan. The meeting adjourned without an answer. But the next morning, as the people woke up, they saw a shape moving around where the fragments still were. As they got closer, they noticed it was Serach bat Asher. What was she doing? See, I should tell you that, as was reminded to me by Rabbi Timoner, that Serach bat Asher is a woman from this time whose name is recorded in the book of Genesis as going down to Mitzrayim and into slavery. But then she was also named again in the book of Exodus as among those who came out from Mitzrayim and from slavery. She had lived then that whole time for hundreds of years. And it is that lifespan that allows her now to bend down and pick up the first shattered piece. As the people gather around, she tells her story. She recounts every loss that they experienced in slavery. She remembers them all, every humiliation, every setback, every time they were beaten into despair, every grief and every trauma. And then she told them of the hundreds of years that she had lived to see how they had healed from every one, how they had grieved and wept, how they had held one another up and helped restore each other, to help each other become strong again. She told of every single story of how they survived each time it felt like their world was shattered beyond repair, how they picked up the pieces and pressed on. And listening and understanding, one by one, every broken-hearted person came forward, bent down, and picked up one of the broken pieces. It felt jagged in their hand, but familiar. And it reminded them of every time they had despaired or grieved and were able to heal and repair and start again. Thousands came, and then hundreds of thousands. And they remembered that each of them were the brokenhearted who knew how to do this, who knew how to heal. And eventually, Moses' anger gave way to remembering his own losses and how he survived them, and he picked up a piece. And Aaron's shame transformed into grief, and he picked up a piece. And Nachshon's impatience relaxed into the memory of his own wounds and healing, and he picked up a piece. And by the end of that day, there was not one person who had not picked up a shard of the shattered tablets and placed them into the Mishkan. It will always be the brokenhearted who know how to pick up the pieces when everything feels destroyed beyond repair. It's us. It's us, we whose hearts break with the news, with the ongoing war, who break when others' bodies are broken. We are not beyond repair, and we do not need to escape into the next distraction either. We just need to know that we have it in us to pick up the pieces and press on, for it's what we have been doing for thousands of years. In fact, this is the whole story of creation. The Jewish mystics teach that when God created the world, God filled vessels with God's own light. But unable to contain the divine light, they shattered into millions of pieces. And our job together is to find the light attached to those shattered pieces and restore it and carry it forward with us and be God's partners in repairing that which has been broken. The Ari teaches, in fact, that there are shards out there that can only be found and lifted up by the person who is meant to find them. So you've got a shard to find, and you've got a shard to find, and you've got a shard to find. And thank goodness that you are here, because if you were not here, then that shard would be left behind. We often call this work tikkun olam, repair of the world. Perhaps that term is familiar to you now. It will be the brokenhearted who pick up the pieces so that trans kids are protected, so that women have control over their own bodies, so that Israel and Palestine can build something new and next, so that refugees can find shelter, so that our democracy will be protected and our planet restored to health. It's not just a nice midrash, it's a map for how we go forward from here. And August and Noah, it is the map that you began to draw with your words of Torah, because our journeys must always begin with the right questions. So thank you for asking them today, and mazel tov on this simcha and on taking on the mantle of Jewish tradition so that we might repair the world together. Shabbat shalom.